It was just another morning at Maple Grove, and as usual I stepped into my backyard with my coffee, ready to enjoy the quiet. But instead of grass, I found a swamp. Huge puddles shimmered under the sun, and my hose, coiled near the fence, looked sweaty, like it had been working all night. I live alone, no kids, no roommates, just me and a basil plant that's barely hanging on. So who was turning my backyard into a water park? At first, I thought it might be a leaky pipe. I called the water company, but they said everything was fine except for my bill, which looked like the budget for a Hollywood blockbuster. Something was wrong, and I wasn't going to let it slide. I started watching the neighborhood like a B-movie amateur detective, the kind who trips over their own clues. My faucet, spotless, shining like it had never worked a day in its life. The hose, no holes, hanging in the yard like a retired snake. But every morning, without fail, it woke, up damp, with little droplets glistening at the tip, as if it had been out at a secret rave. Something was off in Maple Grove, and I was going to figure it out, even if it was just to save my pride as an average homeowner. It was one of those mornings sipping reheated coffee and staring at my yard, a mix of weeds and cracked dirt worthy of an apocalyptic flick, when my eyes locked onto the neighbor's lot. Lorraine, the neighborhood's unofficial queen, had turned her backyard into a damn postcard. Vibrant flowers, the kind that scream, "Look at me," lined perfect beds. The grass, mowed with a ruler, probably with nail clippers, it was that flawless. It looked like a golf course designed by a symmetry-obsessed maniac. Meanwhile, my lawn seemed to be begging for a zombie apocalypse to gain some charm. Lorraine was an enigma. She'd arrived a few months ago with a moving truck that looked like it was carrying a museum of fancy furniture and boxes labeled in envy-inducing calligraphy. She wasn't part of the HOA, too busy for tedious meetings, she'd say. But that didn't stop her from acting like Maple Grove's unofficial sheriff. She was the one sending politely threatening emails about trash can sizes, 80 centimeter to max, per the neighborhood standard. She was the one giving disapproving looks at Mrs. Jenkins' floral curtains, suggesting more neutral tones, for the neighborhood's harmony, and always with that smile, teeth too white, eyes that seemed to calculate your sins in real time. It gave me chills. I didn't want to believe Lorraine would be that shameless. I mean, stealing water from my faucet? Really? That was the kind of thing you'd expect from a slapstick comedy villain, not a woman who looked like she stepped out of a cleaning product commercial. But the clues were there. Besides the damp hose, I started noticing other details. Her sprinkler, for instance, was always on before sunrise, like it was avoiding witnesses. The proof landed in my lap on a Sunday morning like a pinless grenade. I was coming back from the bakery, balancing a bag of slightly squashed donuts, because, of course, I picked the newbie cashier's line when I saw the scene that changed everything. There was Lorraine in her morning glory, dressed in leggings that screamed, "I'm fit but also sophisticated," and a straw hat that looked straight out of a gardening magazine. She was dragging my hose across my yard with the ease of someone grabbing a coffee in their own kitchen, like she owned the place, like Maple Grove had a contract stating everything belonged to her reign of perfection. I stopped on the sidewalk, the donut bag slipping from my hand, as I watched her connect. My hose, which by the way took 2 hours of research on the hardware store's website, to a sprinkler so fancy it probably had Wi-Fi. The water sprayed out, forming perfect arcs over her garden, each drop falling like it was following choreography. And Lorraine? She was humming, I swear, humming some tune from a margarine commercial while adjusting the sprinkler with the precision of a jeweler. It was like she was filming a Live the Perfect Life ad right in my face. I stood there, jaw dropped, my brain trying to process if this was real or if I'd stumbled into a reality show without being told. Then she saw me. Instead of freezing like any normal person caught in the act would, Lorraine gave an exaggerated wave that nearly dislocated her shoulder. "Your hose is awesome, neighbor," she shouted, her voice a mix of friendliness and audacity. "Don't worry, it's just a quick thing." A quick thing? A quick thing? Every drop from that sprinkler was my money swirling down the drain. My water bill already looked like a Hollywood movie budget, and there she was, watering her Dutch tulips with my dignity. My first instinct was to charge across the yard like her bull ripped the hose out and tossed the sprinkler into the street, maybe even yell something epic like, "This isn't a free water buffet." But I took a deep breath. I'm more about planning than shouting. Shouting is fleeting. Well executed. Plans, those leave a mark. I went inside, dumped the donuts on the table, now officially sacrificed for the cause, and locked myself in the living room with a cold cup of coffee and a notebook I dubbed Operation End the Water Party. First, I analyzed the enemy. Lorraine wasn't just any neighbor. She was a strategist. That woman could get the whole neighborhood to follow rules no one remembered agreeing to. Last week, she convinced Mr. Thompson to paint his garage beige because dark gray doesn't vibe with the street's energy. And the worst part? He thanked her. Lorraine had charisma, timing, and a terrifying ability to make you feel like the villain for questioning her. Confronting her head-on would be like going to war with a pocket knife against a tank. That afternoon, I decided to swallow my pride and tried diplomacy. After all, I'm a reasonable guy, or so I kept telling myself, as I crossed the street with a bag of donuts now wilted, still haunting my kitchen. I knocked on Lorraine's door with a smile so forced I felt my teeth complain. It was the kind of expression you rehearse in the mirror before asking your boss for a raise. My plan? Be polite, offer her an honorable way out, and maybe keep Maple Grove from turning into the set of a water war. Lorraine opened the door like she was expecting a fan club. She was wearing a white linen blouse, the kind that says I'm chic even in the heat, and a pearl necklace that probably had its own name. A wave of lavender scent hit me from her house, nearly knocking me over. Well, well, the neighborhood. "Detective," she said with a rehearsed giggle. I ignored the jab, or tried to, and got straight to the point, keeping my tone neighborly. "Lorraine, everything okay with your water? I noticed you using my hose. Maybe you need help with your faucet?" She threw her head back and laughed like I'd told the joke of the year. Then she clapped her hands, clapped, like I was a kid showing off a poorly drawn picture. "Problem? None, dear. Your hose is just perfect. The pressure's great. You know, way better than mine, which keeps coughing like an old car." She paused, tilting her head with a smile that was half angel, half contract you didn't read before signing. "Here in Maple Grove we share, right? That's what community's about." Share? My water bill wasn't a communal phone plan. "Lorraine." I felt a heat rising up my neck, but I held it together, or what was left of it. I tried to explain as gently as I could muster that I wasn't cool with her taking my stuff without asking. "It's just, you know, water's kind of expensive, and I kind of need the hose for my yard." Okay, my yard was more of a monument to laziness, but she didn't need to know that. I was polite, I swear. I even used a tone I learned from videos on how to negotiate without losing it. But Lorraine, untouchable. She gave me a pat on the shoulder. A pat, like I was a dog in need of comfort. "Relax, we're family here in Maple Grove. No need to worry about these little things." The little things echoed in my head like a gong. Before I could snap back, she pointed to her yard where the flowers looked like they were posing for a magazine shoot. "Look how beautiful it is. Isn't it better for everyone when the neighborhood shines?" And then, with the grace of someone closing a theater curtain, she shut the door. In my face. I stood there on her porch, the echo of the latch still ringing in my ears, thinking that no family steals water from each other. My great-aunt, who'd fight over a slice of Christmas cake, seemed like an angel compared to Lorraine. I went back home with my ego bruised and one certainty: diplomacy didn't work with her. Lorraine was like a hurricane wearing lipstick. You try to talk, but in the end you either run or arm yourself. I sat on the couch staring at my Operation End the Water Party notebook, now covered in angry scribbles in the margins. My mind was racing. I could call the HOA, but Lorraine already had half of them wrapped around her finger with her lemon cupcakes and chats about neighborhood standards. I could complain to City Hall, but that would take months, and I didn't have the patience to fill out forms in triplicate. I'm the kind of guy who likes practical solutions. No drama, no endless HOA meetings that only serve to argue over the coffee flavor. So I went to the hardware store, the one that smells like grease and has a clerk who seems to know the meaning of life, and bought a faucet lock. Not just any lock. It was a miniature fortress, the kind that looks like it was made to guard a pirate's treasure or the secret of a lost civilization. I came home with a smirk, imagining Lorraine's face when she met my new water security system. I installed the lock with the precision of a surgeon, tightening each screw like it was a vote for revenge. As I turned the key, I muttered to myself, "Game over, Lorraine, done." My faucet now looked like the entrance to a Swiss vault, and I went to bed with the satisfaction of someone who'd finally delivered checkmate. I dreamed of silent sprinklers, normal water bills, and a yard that might one day rival hers. Okay, maybe not, but a guy can dream. The next morning, the dream turned into a nightmare. I went down to the yard with my coffee in hand, ready to savor my victory, and there it was. The lock, my fortress, tossed on the ground like trash. Not just tossed, mutilated. The metal was twisted, cut with a precision that screamed, "Someone did this with hate." I stood there staring at the pieces while my brain tried to process it. Who does this? Who looks at a lock and thinks, "I'm going to destroy you"? It had to be Lorraine. I pictured her, in silk pajamas, laughing like a soap opera villain, while wielding bolt cutters with the energy of someone toppling a house of cards. I looked across the street, and there was the proof, in flesh, bone, and gym leggings. Lorraine, in the peak of her morning glory, was using my hose to wash her porch. It wasn't just watering the garden anymore. She'd escalated to cleaning the tiles with water jets that looked choreographed. The hose danced in her hands like a waltz partner, and she was whistling a tune as if the whole world should applaud her. My water bill was probably bigger than the GDP of a small country by now, and there she was, turning my faucet into her personal spa. I swallowed the rest of my coffee, which now tasted like defeat, and crossed the street. I tried to stay calm, but my voice came out shaky, like a lawyer facing a shark. "Lorraine, about the lock, did you see what happened?" She stopped, propped the hose on her shoulder like it was a hunting rifle, and gave me that smile that mixed innocence and menace. "That lock, my God, way too dangerous. It could hurt someone, you know. A distracted neighbor, a kid. I took care of it for you. Took care of it. For you." Each word was a punch to my gut. She even had the audacity to wink like I should thank her for destroying my property. I tried to argue. I swear I did. "Lorraine, I put the lock on to protect the faucet. My water." But she was already back to work, aiming the hose at an invisible spot on the porch. "Relax, neighbor. Here in Maple Grove, we look out for each other. Now let me finish up before the sun gets too hot." And just like that, with the ease of someone dismissing a pizza delivery guy, she turned her back on me. I stood there on the sidewalk, feeling the heat from the pavement creep up my legs and the anger climb up my head. Frustrated, I was done playing chess with an opponent who ate the pieces. No more diplomacy, locks, or conversations that ended with pats on the shoulder. I needed proof, something so solid even Lorraine's charm couldn't dismantle it. So, I decided to become a filmmaker. Not the Oscar-chasing kind, but the kind who buys a security camera small enough to go unnoticed. I went to the electronics store, picked a model that could record a bird's sigh, and came back with the excitement of someone about to change the game. I installed the camera with the care of a master criminal. I hid it inside a garden ornament, a hideous ceramic gnome I inherited from the house's previous owner. I positioned the gnome near the faucet, with the lens aimed at the yard, and prayed Lorraine wouldn't suspect a figurine with crooked sunglasses. "Smile, you're on camera," I muttered, as I connected the app to my phone. That night, I slept with a grin I hadn't worn since the day I got a free pizza by mistake. 2 days later, the Oscar for Best Amateur Villain was awarded. At 5:30 a.m., my phone buzzed with a camera notification. There was Lorraine in glorious 4K like a professional hose thief. Dressed in a chic tracksuit, because even in crime she had style, she dragged my hose across the yard with the ease of someone grabbing a coffee, filling buckets to water her shrubs, tending to her roses with motherly care, and get this, washing her car. The hood of her sedan gleamed like it was about to strut down a car show runway, all with my water. The E. Audio was pure gold. Between buckets, Lorraine muttered to herself, like a B-movie villain confessing to the wind. Selfish neighbors, only thinking about themselves. My garden deserves this. My garden deserves this. I nearly threw my phone at the wall, but held it together. This wasn't just a video, it was a weapon, a grenade with the pin already pulled. I thought about sending it to the Maple Grove Council, but scrapped that idea fast. That crew was slower than a bank line on the eve of a holiday. The president, Mr. Harold, took a week just to pick the color of the flags for the annual party. That's when I had the idea. If the council was sluggish, the neighborhood wasn't. Everyone in Maple Grove was glued to the condo's online forum, a gossip pit where people debated everything from a neighbor's barking dog to the best jam recipe. I opened my laptop, edited the video to eliminate any chance of Lorraine claiming it was a misunderstanding, thanks to a YouTube tutorial called Editing for Beginners, Make Your Ex Look Bad, and posted the clip with a simple caption. Does this hose look familiar? The thing blew up. In 2 hours, the post had more likes than the photo of the neighborhood's summer barbecue. Comments started popping off like fireworks. Mrs. Jenkins, who never got over Lorraine criticizing, her curtains wrote, knew she was trouble. Last week, she gave me a suggestion to prune my lemon tree. A suggestion. Carl from number 47 dropped a bomb. She fined me for grass too tall when my lawn was 2 centimeters. 2. Even the teenager from number 23 who never showed up on the forum posted a clown emoji followed by someone need water to douse that ego. I was in heaven. Every notification was a pat on the back, proof I wasn't the crazy one in this story. Neighbors who barely waved at me were now sending private messages, sharing their own Lorraine sagas. Someone said she kindly suggested they stop barbecuing because the smell disrupts the neighborhood's harmony. Another swore she measured their trash can with a tape measure to prove it exceeded the 87mm limit. Lorraine wasn't just a water thief. She was Maple Grove's unelected dictator, and I'd lit the fuse for a revolution. The forum post gave me an adrenaline rush. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was winning. Neighbors, once hostages, to Lorraine's reign, were now swapping fire emojis and supportive messages like I was Maple Grove's unlikely hero. But, like any good story, glory comes at a price. And the price showed up at my door on a sunny afternoon with the sound of a doorbell rung with enough force to punch through a wall. I opened the door and there she was. Lorraine with a face that said she was not here to play, like I'd stolen the last cookie from her jar. No chic leggings or straw hat. This time, she came in a navy blue dress that screamed, I'm serious and you're in trouble. Arms crossed, chin up, and those eyes that seemed to calculate how much I'd regret the next 5 minutes. You're spreading lies about me, she said, each word sharp as a steak knife. That video is a disgrace. Maple Grove deserves more class than that. I blinked, a bit dazed, but I didn't back down. After all, I had the 4K evidence of her crime, the forum's support, and a bit of coffee in my veins to keep me steady. I leaned against the doorframe, trying to look more confident than I felt, and laid it out. Lorraine, it's simple. Stop taking my hose and there's no more video. No hose, no problem. I made sure to smile, not the forced one from before, but one that said, I've got the upper hand. For a second I thought she'd explode. Her eyes sparked and I swear I saw a muscle in her cheek twitch like she was holding back a volcano. But Lorraine was Lorraine. Instead of yelling, she huffed, a dramatic huff that could have been on a theater stage, and tossed her hair back. You think you're clever, don't you? Posting videos, turning the neighborhood against me. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at me. This isn't over. Maple Grove is my home, and I don't let just anyone mess with my harmony. Before I could respond, she spun on her heels and marched off, her shoes hitting the pavement like war drums. I closed the door, heart racing, and went straight to my phone to check the forum. The post was still blowing up. 127 likes, 43 comments, and a fresh wave of Lorraine stories. Mrs. Jenkins now swore Lorraine tried to convince the mailman not to deliver to anyone with ugly mailboxes. But as I read, a cold feeling crept up my spine. Lorraine didn't bluff. That huff wasn't surrender. It was the sound of someone planning a counterattack I couldn't yet imagine. The next day dawned like a bad joke. I opened my mailbox expecting normal bills. Electricity, internet, maybe a pizza flyer, and found an official Maple Grove envelope. Inside, a $150 fine with the phrase disruptive behavior, written in letters so serious they seemed to judge my soul. The reason? My security camera, that voyeuristic gnome that caught Lorraine in 4K, was, according to the complaint, an intimidation to the neighborhood's harmony. Intimidation. Harmony. I read the paper 5 times thinking it was a prank, but the council's stamp was there, as real as my urge to punch a wall. Lorraine, of course it was her. The Queen of Audacity had turned the tables, painting me as the villain while she danced in my yard with my hose. I couldn't believe it. She stole my water, trespassed on my property, destroyed my lock like a serial killer of padlocks, and I was the problem. My water bill looked like the budget for a resort, and now I had to pay $150 because Lorraine didn't like being caught on camera. It was like getting fined for reporting a robbery. I called the council, my hand shaking with rage. Mr. Harold answered with that voice of someone who'd rather be golfing. "We'll review it at the next meeting, young man. These things take time." Time? The next meeting was 3 weeks away, and I knew Lorraine had already bought half the council with blueberry muffins and talk of community values. I hung up, threw myself on the couch and stared at the ceiling like it might give me answers. Nothing. Just a mold stain that seemed to laugh at me. Meanwhile, Lorraine decided to take her audacity to Olympic levels. That same afternoon, I went out to grab the paper and saw her in flesh, bone, and neon leggings using my hose like she was the star of an aquatic show. It wasn't just watering the garden anymore. She was spraying the sidewalk, washing her mailbox, and even giving a potted orchid a shower, all right in front of me. When she saw me, she stopped, held the hose like it was a karaoke mic and shouted, "Working great, neighbor." The water jet arced through the air, and she waved with her free hand, like the Queen of England greeting commoners. I froze on the sidewalk, feeling my patience evaporate like the drops on the hot pavement. I went back inside, blood boiling. This wasn't just about water anymore. It was personal. Lorraine didn't just want my yard. She wanted my dignity, my sanity, my right to turn on my faucet without picturing her garden gleaming at my expense. I tried to breathe deep, count to 10, but stopped at 3. My patience was on the floor, crushed like the lock she destroyed. That's when the spark hit. No more locks, videos, or conversations that ended with her calling me dear. I needed something bigger, not petty revenge, a lesson, one that would make Lorraine look in the mirror and, for the first time, question her own reign. After the $150 fine and Lorraine's performance spraying the sidewalk like she owned my faucet, I knew I needed a masterstroke. No more videos or locks. I wanted a lesson that would have Maple Grove talking for years. Inspiration struck where I least expected it, a sewer construction site a few blocks away, where the city was digging holes and promising improvements no one understood. I passed by one afternoon, dodging orange cones and shouting workers, and saw the perfect weapon, a temporary sewage tank, the kind that seems to hold an entire city's sins. The smell? Out of this world. It was like someone had distilled vengeance into a stench. Right then, I knew it was exactly what I needed. Approached one of the workers, a guy named Mike with a trucker mustache and a laugh that came straight from his chest. "Hey, buddy," I started, trying to sound casual while the tank's smell tried to knock me out. "I'm testing an alternative irrigation system. Can I take a look at that tank?" Mike raised an eyebrow, probably thinking I was crazy or an overly dedicated environmentalist. But money talks, and $40 later, paired with a handshake and a joke about stinky gardens, he gave me access to the tank for one night. "Just don't fall in," he said, laughing as he went back. To his tractor, I grinned. "Fall in? No, Mike." But someone was about to dive in head first. At home, I turned into MacGyver, or at least the version that's watched too many YouTube tutorials and still mixes up screws. I grabbed my toolbox, which until then had only been used for half-baked repairs, and started the boldest plan of my life. First, I installed a double valve on the backyard faucet, the kind that looks like it belongs in a secret lab. One line went to clean water, so I wouldn't end up watering my own feet with sewage. The other, hidden like a snake in the grass, connected the hose to a secondary line I planned to hook up to the sewage tank. I camouflaged everything with dirt, dry grass, and even an old pot I threw on top, making my yard look like neglect, not a trap. The tensest part was at night. Under the light of a half-dead flashlight, I dragged the secondary line to the construction site, praying I wouldn't get caught by a security guard, or worse, Lorraine on one of her neighborhood standards. Patrols. I connected the line to the tank, using a hand pump I'd bought on a whim during a sale, best investment ever. The stench hit like a punch, and I held my breath while tightening the connectors. From a distance, the hose in my yard looked like it always did, innocent, ready to water flowers. But when Lorraine grabbed it, she'd learned that not all water is potable. Or rather, that some water comes with personality. I got back home with my heart in my throat, my body smelling like a sewer project, and a mix of pride and dread. In the mirror, I saw a guy who looked half genius, half lunatic with dirt in his hair and a crooked smile. I tested the valve 10 times just to make sure clean water came out for me, and the gift was reserved for her. Everything was perfect. I sat on the porch, sipping coffee that had gone cold, and pictured the scene. Lorraine, at 5:30 a.m., in her chic tracksuit, turning on the hose to water her roses, the jet shooting out, the smell rising, her flowers wilting under the weight of my counterattack. And the best part? She'd have no one to blame. Who'd believe that I, the neighbor with the apocalyptic yard, pulled off an operation like this? But a pang of doubt hit. What if she suspected something? What if the council investigated and I ended up with a fine bigger than 150, like garden poisoning? I shook my head. No, I'd come too far. Lorraine wanted war, and I was delivering. A battle worthy of legend. Across the street, her house was dark, but I knew she was there, probably polishing her nails or writing another complaint for the council. Let her write. Tomorrow, the game would change. I lay in bed but didn't sleep. My mind spun with visions of her sprinkler spewing chaos, her pristine garden turning into a swamp, and Lorraine for the first time without that queenly smile. Operation End the Water Party was locked and loaded, and Maple Grove would never be the same. The next morning at 6 a.m. sharp, a sound yanked me out of bed like an apocalypse alarm, the hiss of the faucet being turned on. My heart raced. It was her. I bolted to my phone with the agility of someone fleeing a fire, nearly knocking over the coffee mug I'd forgotten on the nightstand. I opened the camera app, and there was the stage of my triumph, in glorious 4K, Lorraine, in her impeccable yard, wearing a pastel tracksuit that screamed, "I'm perfect even in the morning." She was connecting my hose to a spinning sprinkler, one of those that seemed to dance while watering, adjusting it with the precision of someone who thinks the world revolves around her. I held my breath, my finger hovering over the screen as if I could trigger the chaos. Lorraine turned the valve, confident, expecting the crystal-clear jet that made her roses gleam. But what came out was something else. A brown, viscous, foul-smelling stream that seemed to have a life of its own, as if the sewage tank had been holding a grudge for years and was now spewing it all at once. The sprinkler kicked into gear, spinning like a carousel from hell, and spread the gift in perfect arcs across her yard. The immaculate grass, soaked in toxic sludge, the wicker porch chairs, painted a shade no decor store would endorse. Even her always pristine front door took a shower that left it looking like a horror movie set. Lorraine let out a scream that could shatter glass. Not a startled yelp. It was a primal roar, like she'd stepped on a wasp nest while discovering the world had ended. She tried to run to the sprinkler but slipped on the grass, now a slick swamp, and fell to her knees, hands flailing as if she could will the sewage back into the pipe. "No, my garden!" she shrieked, while the sprinkler, oblivious to the drama, kept up its macabre dance, dousing the tulips, the orchids, even the ceramic flamingo, she swore, added charm. The stench rose, an invisible cloud that seemed ready to conquer all. Of Maple Grove. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, started to appear. Mrs. Jenkins stepped out in her pajamas, coughing and pinching her nose, but with a glint in her eyes that said, "Finally, justice." Carl from number 47 stopped on the sidewalk, phone in hand, filming while laughing so hard he nearly fell over. Even the teenager from number 23, who never woke up before noon, opened her window and yelled, "Gross, Lorraine! Composting now!" The neighborhood, once bowing to her reign, now watched the Queen's collapse. The vibe a mix of funeral and carnival. From across the street, I watched it all on my phone, sitting on the porch with my coffee in hand. The liquid had gone cold, but the taste of victory, hot, sweet, perfect. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud when Lorraine, covered in muck, finally reached the sprinkler and shut it off. But it was too late. Her yard looked like a post-apocalyptic swamp, with flowers wilting in real time and the wicker, chairs begging for a dignified burial. She stood there panting, staring at the wreckage like she'd lost an Oscar, a crown, and her soul all in the same minute. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the $150 fine, the destroyed luck, the working grate, taunts while she washed her car with my water. No, Lorraine deserved every drop of that jet. My Operation End the Water Party wasn't just revenge, it was a masterpiece. That afternoon, while I was still savoring my cold coffee and the thrill of my morning victory, Hurricane Lorraine came roaring back. I was in the living room checking the neighborhood forum, which was already a mess of sewage sprinkler memes, when I heard heavy footsteps in my yard. I pulled back the curtain, and there she was, looking like an angry version of someone who'd just crawled out of a swamp. Her hair, always flawless, was plastered to her forehead like it had made a pact with humidity. Her skirt, once white and commercial-worthy, now sported a mysterious stain I didn't dare identify. She was pointing at my house like she was leading a crusade. "You think you're clever," she yelled, storming into my yard without so much as knocking because, of course, boundaries weren't Lorraine's thing. "This is a crime, sabotage. I'm calling the police and you'll regret messing with me." Her voice trembled, but not with fear. It was pure rage, the kind that sends pots flying in soap operas. I stepped onto the porch, heart racing, but with a calm that surprised even me. I leaned on the railing like a Western sheriff and replied coolly, "Lorraine, you wanted free water. I just delivered what you asked for. Didn't like the quality? Take it up with the supplier." For a second, she was speechless. A miracle in Maple Grove. Her face went from red to a purple I swear doesn't exist in nature. She pointed her finger, her nail still gleaming despite the chaos, and hissed, "You don't know who you're dealing with. I'll sue you, I'll ruin you and that pathetic yard of yours." The threat was so theatrical, I almost expected applause, but the only sound was the neighbor's dog barking, as shocked as I was. Before I could fire back, I noticed movement at Mrs. Jenkins' house across the street. Her curtain twitched and there she was, phone in hand, filming like a war correspondent. Lorraine, blind with rage, didn't see. I didn't say anything either. Sometimes the universe does the work for you. She huffed, spun on her heels, leaving a muddy footprint on my dead lawn, and marched back to her house, probably to call her lawyer or take a 3-hour shower. I barely had time to process the scene when my phone started buzzing like it had a life of its own. Mrs. Jenkins's video was already on the neighborhood forum titled, "Lorraine Loses It in Neighbor's Yard." Within minutes, the clip was blowing up. Someone added dramatic background music, another slapped on a Mexican soap opera filter, and hashtags started popping. "Sewage justice," "us clueless neighbor," even a Lorraine in the swamp that made me spit out my coffee from laughing so hard. The comments were a party. "She said crime, who stole the hose first?" wrote Carl. "Thought she only watered flowers, not fights," posted the teenager from number 23 with a popcorn emoji. I didn't need to post anything. All of Maple Grove was doing the work for me. Neighbors who used to just nod, "Good morning," were now sending supportive messages, like I was the leader of a revolution. Mrs. Jenkins even stopped by with a plate of cookies, a bit stale, but the gesture counted, and said, "You gave her what she deserved, but be careful. She doesn't give up." The neighborhood had turned into a circus, and Lorraine, once the untouchable queen, was now the main joke, the meme no one could stop sharing. A week later, when I was almost used to checking my yard every hour, I saw something that made me rub my eyes to be sure. A moving truck big as a dinosaur parked in front of Lorraine's house. No for sale signs, no forum gossip. Just boxes stacked, furniture wrapped, and sweaty workers loading everything in a hurry. Lorraine, the queen who ruled Maple Grove with sharp smiles and creative finds, was leaving. No goodbyes, no drama, not even one last wave with the stolen hose. She vanished like smoke, leaving only the echo of the stinky sprinkler. I stood on the porch sipping coffee that for the first time in months didn't taste like anger. I watched the activity, half expecting a sign of her, maybe one last speech. About neighborhood standards. Nothing. Just the glint of a navy blue dress in a car speeding down the street, too fast to be anything but an escape. Lorraine, the untouchable, had thrown in the towel. Or maybe the swamp in her yard had finally broken that garden dictator spirit. Either way, Maple Grove was breathing a sigh of relief. Her house didn't stay empty for long. Within days, a new family moved in. Young parents, two noisy kids, and a dog more excited than any sprinkler. Their yard came alive with scattered toys, a lopsided volleyball net, and even an impromptu barbecue that filled the street with smoke and laughter. One afternoon, the mum, Clara, invited me over for coffee. "We heard about you," she said, with a smile that held a hint of respect. "The neighborhood's lighter because of you, thanks." I took the coffee a bit awkwardly and joked it was just a hydraulic misunderstanding. But deep down, I felt a pride that barely fit in my chest. My hose was mine again, hanging in the yard like a war medal. The water bill dropped back to normal. No more numbers that looked like they were funding a private aquarium. My yard, well, it stayed dry, a desert I now saw with a certain fondness, like a trophy from the battle. On the neighborhood forum, the sewage justice video was still circulating, but it had gone beyond Maple Grove. People worldwide were sharing it, commenting about their own Lorraines, nosy neighbors who needed a lesson. Some guy from Australia even said he used fish puree to scare off a tool thief. I laughed, thinking my sewage tank might have sparked a global revolution. Maple Grove changed. Neighbors who used to trade forced good mornings now stopped to chat. Mrs. Jenkins started hosting bingo nights with cookies that were less rock hard. Carl from number 47 quit griping about other people's lawns and even gave me a tomato seedling, which of course died in my yard. Even the HOA Council, once a fan club for Lorraine's muffins, started listening to people, or at least pretending better. Mr. Harold even cancelled my $150 fine with a note that read, "Misunderstanding. Resolved." I kept the paper just in case. I learned something from all this. Sometimes a bit of sewage is the best way to clean up a neighborhood. Not literally, my nose still remembers that tank, but in the sense of setting things right. Lorraine wanted control, but she ended up showing that no one rules an entire neighborhood. Maple Grove became a place of smiles, barbecues, and respect, where hoses stay where they belong, and faucets don't turn into battlegrounds. The cameras, I kept those running. The ceramic gnome still keeps watch, with its crooked sunglasses and hidden lens. Not that I expect trouble. The new family already offered me sunflower seedlings, and their dog seems more interested in digging holes than stealing water. But just in case another Lorraine shows up, with fancy sprinklers and dreams of a floral dictatorship, if she does, I'm ready. After all, Maple Grove is my home and nobody messes with my hose.